Hello, everyone. Welcome to the House of Mystery. I'm here with my guest, Masterchudi. Please say hello.
Hey, what's up, man?
Today, we're going to be talking about the Japanese art of manga, what we love about it, what makes it different from Western comics, and our favorite genres and manga titles. So, let me ask you, Masterchudi, what first got you into manga?
Um, so you know, as a kid, I watched a lot of. I mean, well, not that I watched a lot of anime, but when I was a kid, first thing that really got me, of course, into manga was or anime was watching Dragon Ball Z, Toonami. When I was around nine, like 8, 9. I watched a lot of Toonami. So apart from DBZ, I watched a lot of Rurouni Kenshin, Yu Yu Hakusho, um, Gundam, G Gundam, Gundam Wing, and all that. So at first, I really thought it was, just anime. And was not, I didn't know it was its own comic. But then, as I got like a little bit older, like when I was like 11 or 12, like my sister, who was kind of into it before I was, like showed me like oh, there's like manga, and they had their own comics, and then I realized that it was different from like the usual American comics because you had to read them differently. So from there, I got into I was reading like DBZ comics, I mean DBZ manga. Then I got into Naruto. I got into One Piece. I got into Full Metal Alchemist. A lot of manga out there as well. And from there, I started checking out other titles like Bleach as well. From those main four, and once they started, ending, I started checking out like whatever titles I could. The ones that really interested me. That's when I really started getting into more anime, more manga. From people's recommendations, I started getting into stuff like Future Diary, Parasite. Um, what else we got? Parasite, more Gundam stuff. Uh, Basically, and from there, I also started looking into like other animes like Cowboy Bebop, Outlaw Star, um, Samurai Champloo. Anything that I get my hands on that I think is pretty interesting, I'll take it out. And whenever I see like a number one manga that catches my eye, like when it comes out with that first chapter, I'll go out and pretty much say, let me check it out. So yeah, that's what got me into manga. And to be quite honest, even though I read comics, I didn't get into comics really seriously until much later, like a few years ago, where where I knew about it, and it was the movies and it was the cartoon shows that gave me some knowledge, and I would go on Wikipedia and check them out. But manga was the first thing that I really got into.
It's really interesting. What first got me into manga, like you, I was watching Dragon Ball Z, Yu Yu Hakusho, all those type of shows, but my mother actually was a reporter, and she
Oh,
got her hands on before it actually came out in the States, a copy of American Shonen Jump #1 that she gave to me.
oh
And
wow,
I swear to God, I read that thing so many times. Uh, and it was really a big turning point because I wanted to know all these type of things because there were stories that I had never heard before and series I never heard before. Like I had never heard One Piece until I my mother gave me that book. So this really opened up and broadened my horizons as far as anime and manga go.
gotcha. That's awesome. That's cool.
Get some people in the chat. Hello, Dalton. Hello, Monica. So, what would you say is your favorite genre of manga?
Um, it really depends. Like, when I first got into it, obviously, your usual shonen was probably my favorite. It's probably my favorite genre, which is why I always kept up with the One Piece, the Bleach, the Full Metal Alchemist, Dragon Ball Z, Naruto. Anything that I felt was like the next shonen. When I was like, I'm a kid and a teenager. And kind of when I started college, that was my thing. But and as well as the Gundam stuff. So yeah, shonen. But as I started moving on, I started looking at a lot of psychological thriller stuff. So stuff like Future Diary really interested me. Promise Neverland, which we were talking about before this, like a lot of psychological stuff that are really different, that are not really your usual shonen stuff that will really grab at you are things that I really look into. So I'll look at a good shonen, of course, nothing against the genre, but now I'm into a lot of mystery, a lot of psychological thriller. If I can stomach it sometimes, I might delve into a little bit of horror as well. Not really a slice of life person or anything like that. I kind of like to focus on stuff with some action and stuff that'll keep me engaged. So yeah, those are pretty much my genres.
Personally, as far as manga go, I am an action junkie. I love the way that they do fight scenes in manga.
Hmm. Oh, no
I
doubt.
like martial arts manga, like History's Strongest Disciple Kenichi. I like mech manga, like Kuragane no Line Barrel, some of the Gundam manga, and also like psychological manga. People that use their minds, like Death Note or
Oh yeah.
Naruto.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, my taste in manga very much varies, but I think if there's a type that I like the most, it's the action oriented. So, what titles currently have your interest?
So Promise Neverland has my interest, of course. Definitely. I always keep up with it. It's right now my number one, I would say. Um, Chainsaw Man, which just is 15 chapters in. That's something that caught my eye as well. Stuff like a lot of these psychological stuff, like Trail of Blood, which is kind of like a odd sci-fi thing. Well, not sci-fi thing. It's a kind of like psychological thriller as well. Manga that is still under great hiatuses, like Black Lagoon and Berserk, obviously still have my interest as well. Um, so right now, those are the ones I'm keeping up with. But whatever new pops up, whatever looks interesting, I'm going to take it. But right now, those are my five main ones that I'm looking into now. And plus, from time to time, I might check out I might check out some other other stuff that's popular in the grapevine of manga. Oh, hello. Oh boy.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. I like a manga called Doctor Stone. It focuses on science
Oh
in
yeah.
a post-apocalyptic world.
Oh yeah, I heard of that. I was actually keeping up with it, but I fell off for some reason. I'm trying to get back in, so I might just start over again and then get myself up to date.
If you have to start over again, it's still a great read, even though
Of
they're
course.
rebuilding stuff.
Yeah.
But Death Note, I really like the battle of wits in that.
Oh
The
yeah.
conflict between Light and L is legendary. Um, there's one, the case file. It's called Kindaichi. It's a murder mystery type of manga, similar to Case Closed or Detective Conan, if it's called
Oh
again.
yeah.
But yeah, those are the titles that I'm currently following, and of course, I'm still following. There are long-standing titles like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I am a big fan of JoJo.
Yeah. I know a lot of people who are fans of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a really great series. It's been going on since the '80s, and I gotta say, there's a reason why it's lasted so long, and that's because the creator still finds ways to keep things fresh and unique, and it's a great read.
I had no idea it was been going on since the '80s. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's one of the longest running manga currently out. I think the only one that might be going on longer is Hajime no Ippo.
Ah. Oh yeah. With like 1,000 or something chapters. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're also a fan of Western comics, so you know.
Oh yes, I am, man. Yeah.
What differences do you find between Western and Japanese manga?
Well, I would say like so. Even though like when I was like a kid and like a teenager, I still um would read I would still like read comics occasionally from time to time. I know like the first major comic I ever read was a trade paperback of No Man's Land, Batman. So I really like the idea of like that whole story. It's something that really stuck with me. I also read like The Reign of Superman, so I always thought they were very serious and very rigid on how they do things.
Hmm.
Manga seems to have a more I mean, they care about the story, but they seem very flexible with it at times, which they do it so far. It's always been good. I think that they really like to today. I think that they really engage their audience more so than like Western comics do. Even though I got a couple favorite titles I'm looking into, like something like Promise Neverland. Like they always get you in it. You always engage in the story, and they always put like the story first, like you want to know what happens, like you want to, and it's what gets people discussing about, oh, this scene was great, this this scene was pretty legit, this character did this, I didn't expect it. It's why people like Death Note so much, because of the characterization of the characters, their wits and everything like that. It's the same thing that you would expect from uh sorry, not it's the same thing that you expect from, like, say, even with shonen like manga and anime. Like, yeah, we look at like, oh my gosh, like this guy's technique is like killer and stuff like that, or his like power levels over the roof. But people are still getting like, wow, this battle had like a significant effect on X. Like, what's going to happen? So right now, manga is really taking the story seriously. I think that's why people really feel it, why people really vibe with it more so with the story and everything like that. And I think that's extremely important for like a writer to really get into and focus on that.
Yeah. One of the things that makes Western comics different from manga is that Western comics, they will have another creator come in and they will change the story, they will change the characters, they will do something completely different. With manga, the story is the story, the characters are the characters, and that's never going to change. No one's going to come in later and then just retcon everything away.
Oh yeah.
And with manga, it's all self-contained stories. There's no shared manga universe like they have in DC or Marvel.
Yeah.
So no writer's going to use another character from another writer in their story. And I think that um, kind of keeps characters true to the intention of their original creators, and that's something that I think is important.
Oh yeah, I definitely I definitely agree with that. I think that there I think that right now, um the way the manga is set up, that you know there's really no it's really every book is really a self-contained universe. Like anytime they do try to combine different books together, like I know they did something like it's always like a special, like they had a One Piece and DBZ special, you know about, and it was a self-contained thing, but they were all like, oh, these characters are still themselves and they're interacting with characters that are still themselves, and they move forward with that. I mean, even the whole even all that the video games were like the Shonen Jump and everything like that, where they
Yeah,
combine the worlds. I mean, they're not really trying to do anything like change their characters or anything. It's just like we're in this universe and we got to figure out what to do as well. Now, their time, and I think that the writers realize, like, these are our properties and we're not really going to share them. It gives the writers autonomy. I think that readers pretty much feel like we kind of like that there's no shared universe, whereas DC and Marvel, they you have a bunch of, it's really hard to like to like separate them and keep them self-contained, because they're all like together, they're all pretty much in a world, and we've all liked that aspect of it. And even though comics are going through a certain type of interesting period, I think people still like the like the idea of a shared universe. I mean, it's working in the films so far. People have liked that. People like the connectivity about, oh, how does this affect that in another way. But right now, I think that the more that you have less shared universes in manga, the more that you have writers who can come up with their own unique stories and don't feel like constrained about either ruining the universe in general, or say ruining a character. So people have their autonomy to do whatever they want to, and the fans can either accept that or they don't accept that.
Uh, one other thing I noticed that manga, at least specific manga, should focus heavily on are the fights. Um,
Hmm.
in a comic book, a fight can last either part of a book or maybe even the entire book, but generally it's wrapped up in the next issue. Mangas can last for like 4 or 5 chapters and sometimes even longer, where it's just focusing on one particular fight between two characters, and it goes into great detail, and the art for it is spectacular. You really get to feel the impact between each hit. And the other thing that manga tends to do is creative use of abilities, where somebody has an ability that seems inconsequential, but they use it in a very creative way where they become very strong. One example of that would be Monkey D. Luffy, the main character for One Piece. He
Hmm.
has a body that's made of rubber, but he's definitely incredibly strong. He extends his fist and then snaps it back, giving his punch an incredible amount of force. He pumps the blood through his veins and at an accelerated rate, making making him much faster. I don't know if this will actually work, but it works in the manga. And he increases the size of his limbs to gives himself like a giant fist. And this just shows that even if something may seem useless, depending on how you use it, it can be very powerful.
Oh, oh yeah, no doubt. Like I've always liked that fight aspect. Sometimes people don't like the fact that you have a bunch of chapters devoted to like fighting Bleach. I mean, that's particularly privy to like shonen manga, like Bleach. Like you had Ichigo and Aizen for like a bunch of chapters, Ichigo versus Kenpaichi for a couple chapters, and all that stuff. Naruto, of course, you had Naruto versus Pain, whole whole chapters devoted to that. Whole crew war to that. Full Metal Alchemist, same thing like that. I appreciate that, but sometimes and it's even seeping into like some of the manga that's really not shonen that goes into like, oh, we're going to devote a whole entire arc to this, or a couple chapters to like this whole problem solving thing, which I think is pretty good like that. um where I think that I kind of appreciate comics is like, unless it's like a huge thing, like they won't devote like necessarily a whole book to a fight, a whole issue to a fight. Sometimes, usually most of that book will be will be dedicated to the fight, but it wouldn't like continuously be fight. Well, let me not say that completely, because I know I read a couple issues of Titans when where Vince Abnett was writing it, Dan Abnett was writing it, and like the whole thing where you had Troya, which was Donna Troy's evil clone, fighting the Titans before they broke up and reformed again. There was like a good 2, 3 issues devoted to that whole battle. So maybe maybe Western comics are learning in that respect, and it was very good. Like the early Titans books were very good, where you had like the OGs still together, where you had Nightwing, Donna Troy, Arsenal, OG Wally West, um, Omen, and Garth Tempest. And you had Bumblebee in there as well. It was a very good. That was a very good run at that. But it shows that people pick up what they know and keep moving forward with that.
Uh, it's true. I've read those issues of Titans, and they were very good. Those are very great storyline.
Mhm.
And another thing that manga has different it from Western comics is that manga is entirely in black and white,
Oh
with
yeah.
very few exceptions. And one of the things I noticed is this is going to compensate. They use very great line work to make things feel more dynamic, and I do like that since it's not in color. Um, do you think that manga would be as enjoyable if it was fully colored like Western comics?
You know what? I'm gonna say no. Um, I like, at first, I was curious about why it wasn't in color, but over the years, it's something I've gotten used to. And I think it makes manga very unique. I think that it gives a lot of, focus to the story, and not to mention some of the people who do write it, draw it. So, to keep up, with the heavy demand, of course, to put everything in color would take a lot of time, but people still come out with great art with black and white, and I think that sometimes black and white really accentuates like the art style very heavily. Even though color can do that too, but it really brings out the skill of the artist within within the manga as well. I've seen some great on black and white, like for an example, Berserk. Some great art has been in like they some of the greatest art I've seen has been in Berserk. It's been in black and white, and you would think that, oh dang man, how would it look in color? But sometimes that black and white, especially with how they shade it, maybe using different shades of pencil, maybe a little bit of charcoal here or there, I think is pretty cool. I think it allows you to also explore different avenues of how to approach said art and doing what you got to do. So I think it would be less enjoyable if it was in color. I would Well, not less enjoyable. I think it'd be more distracting if it was in color. I think that's why they usually say, "Oh, hey, here's like one page in the manga that's full cover. That's pretty cool." And everybody's like, "Oh yeah, that's pretty cool." Then you dive back into the story to the usual formula and keep going.
Manga does seem to engage more in its fans. So in a lot of manga that I know, they always have favorite character voting contests where the fans will write in about who their favorite characters are,
Mhm.
and they will show who won in the manga.
Yeah,
Is that something that you think Western companies should adopt, where fans vote for the fans?
I think so. Um, I would say that in the past they used to do polls like decades ago. I mean, that's how Jason Todd was killed off in the first place because of a poll, and the fans said we don't like Jason Todd at that moment, so the DC decided to say, you know what, fans have spoken. We're going to X Jason Todd, and people did like it. But then about 20 years later, people were like, why don't we bring Jason Todd back? And they brought him back better than ever. I think that it would behoove Marvel and DC to poll fans on what they think of characters, how they think of them, and what they need to do. I think that it would create for a better story. I think it would allow you to say, look, you know, say for example, it might even make the characters better. Like we'll go into Marvel. Say we wanted to kill. Say we wanted to kill. I'm trying to think of characters. Say we wanted to kill, say, not Hope Van Dyne, Nadia Van Nadia Van Dyne, the Nadia Pym, the from the Unstoppable Wasp. Clearly, she has, despite the happy-go-lucky that they try to write her, and she's all about, yeah, I'm with my girls, and we're doing all of this science, and we're this, and we can do anything. It's clear that she has some baggage, a lot of it, and things get dangerous.
She came from the Red Room, the
Yeah,
same
she
place
came from the
that
Red Room.
Widow.
Exactly,
Uh,
but the way that she's been written, you wouldn't know that she was trained by assassins. She seems to, apart from maybe this new run where they seem to be delving on her mental issues, like you wouldn't know like she's it's like you wouldn't know that she has she has issues in this even though let me rephrase that. So that she's from the Red Room. But her first major unstoppable wasp, you wouldn't know that. Everything is happy with her. Everything she seems enjoyable, and she seems to be going on hijinks. Not like a wasp. She doesn't seem to be going on missions. She doesn't seem to be doing this. Now in her newest one, she's still all of that, but you can see that there's some little bit of, baggage. But at the same time, we don't know. So she could go out in a blaze of glory, have her sacrifice her life for her crew or something like that. Or, sacrifice her life to save, maybe the father that she never knew and Hank Pym be a good way to bring him back from whatever limbo he's in as well. But you see, I think that Marvel knows that if they start polling their fans, you're going to have actual fans who, and I'm not saying that some won't abuse the system, there's always abuse, but I still think authentically, you're going to find people who want to have some of these characters that Marvel has put a lot of marketing currency in, and will be like, oh man, what are they going to think if we kill Nadia Van Dyne, or we kill Kamala Khan off, or we kill um, Miles Morales, I think is okay. He'll be fine. But what happens if we say kill America Chavez off, or we kill Kate Bishop off, or we kill Patriot or any of these new dudes off, or we somehow get a vote and we wanted to reboot the Marvel universe, and fans wanted to have Bobby Drake back to the way he was, back to what made him popular. Marvel be like, oh no, man, what are the people who don't read our comics going to think of us? That's how they kind of view things like that. So I would like them to do polls, but it ain't gonna. I don't know whether it's gonna happen or not.
Yeah. Many manga are adapted into animes over in Japan. Is there any manga that has not got an anime that you would like to see get an anime?
Hmm. Yeah. Before Promise Neverland, I was, they've animated Promise Neverland, so that was one. What I've been reading, I would like them to kind of animate this one manga, maybe, um, which is a psychological thriller. I've told you about it. It's a trail of blood. I think an anime would immensely bring out its full potential. Um, I think it will grab a lot of people's interest to read the manga. Not that the manga is bad in any way; it's a fantastic manga. I just think that it would even add more to its exposure. I think because it's been out for a couple of chapters, I think maybe it's time to do that. I think there's some manga that that the way it's going, yeah, they're definitely going to put a animated version of that very soon. Um, like Chainsaw Man. Like I'm looking at that. It's technically it is somewhat technically a shonen manga, but it's kind of a different take on it. But I'm looking at this and I'm thinking like, yeah, it's definitely going to be animated. So, but for my pick, I would say A Trail of Blood, which is what I've been reading, should be animated. Yeah.
There is one that I mentioned before, 20th Century Boys. That's never gotten a anime adaptation. It's gotten some live action movies that were done, but never an anime. And it's so well done and well written, and the characters are so compelling, and the story just grabs you that I think if they did an anime, it would do really well. I really want to see that animated. So, what Western comic book character do you think would do great in a manga setting? You actually had to answer this question before on England Tweet's Comic Book Thunderdome. So
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I'd like to see what your answer is now, though.
um, I think my answer back then was probably as the same as it is now. Red Hood. I think Red Hood is a perfect manga adaptable um character from the Western comics into Japanese manga. I think he has like the type of edginess that can appeal to the Japanese audiences as well as those who really like him. Right now, I think his comic hasn't missed a beat. Right now, I think it's been solid since Rebirth. Almost 3 straight years, and it's been going on pretty well. Um, I would say another one that I think if I were to not choose Red Hood, I think another one that I think would be pretty good to adapt into a manga would be. I would have to. I'm trying to figure this out. I think it could. I think something with Venom could be easily done. I think it would be interesting to do. Um, and then of course oh, sorry, I didn't even. Well, Red Hood would actually be my different answer, actually, but they did it with Blade because they did make a Blade anime. There was a time that they were making Marvel animes. I know they did Iron Man, X Men, Wolverine, and Blade was like the best one in my opinion out of the four. So yeah, I did choose Blade during Angleteen's Superdome battles, but then I'm gonna go with Red Hood. I think Red Hood can work, and somebody like Dexter Soy, who is of he's from Asia as well. He's got that influence. I think that many people can pick his brain, and Dexter Soy's been that artist. He's my favorite artist in comics right now. I really like him. He's good with the fans, but I think yeah, Red Hood is that Western comic character that you can really adapt into a manga, and so goes into an anime, maybe.
Um, a comic character I think would do really great as a manga or anime would be Marvel's Iron Fist, because he's got
Yeah,
martial art. He's got the powers, the Iron Fist. But excuse me for a moment. He's also got great mythology with the heavenly cities and the Tournament of Heaven, where he has to fight for one to see which city will be connected to Earth. And with all the lore and the supporting cast that he has, I think it would just do great as a manga. Like, it definitely gives me a manga feel whenever I just think about the character and the world that he exists in. So yeah, Iron Fist would definitely have to be my choice for a comic book character brought into manga.
definitely. I definitely agree with that. I think there's a lot of potential for Iron Fist to also be very popular in the manga circuit as well.
So we spoke about your favorite genre. What type of manga? What's your least favorite genre?
Um, I mentioned it. Actually, it's I have to say it's slice of life. Um, I'm sure people see value in that type of thing, but I'm not really the type of person who's interested in like the average school day and stuff like that. The teenage romance type of thing. A kind of stylistically done Archie comic. That's not really my thing. You'll never see me really read slice of life manga, simply because it doesn't interest me. I see manga as kind of having stories that are out of the ordinary, that have like a certain element to it, or if it's not like super heroic, stuff that really deals in like mystery, like there has to be some sort of drive
I'll be right
that.
back. Hold on.
No problem.
I'm back. Please continue.
Oh yeah, so what was I saying? Sorry, your question was again what?
Your least favorite genre, and
Oh
you
yeah,
said
sorry, yeah, slice of life, So I mean, like I was saying, manga has to be like extraordinary to me. There's got to be like certain sort of mystical kind of element to it. That's kind of or extraordinary element to it. That's kind of what drew me into manga in the first place. Kind of stuff that you wouldn't see in real life. But if it's like, even if it's not like that, something it really has to like engage me. Like stuff like Conan. I'm engaged by it because he's always solving cases and it's a mystery, and it kind of is kind of out of the ordinary, but not really at the same time. And stuff that's very realistic but psychological, things that really challenge my brain. And something like a slice of life genre ain't really challenging me. So yeah, you'll never really see me reading slice of life.
uh, one genre that I'm not a big fan of personally is the type of shoujo girl aimed manga.
Ah,
Um, it just like I know a lot of girls who like it. I know even know some guys who like it, but it's just not something that I ever got into. Uh, and I am much more action oriented, much more about fighting and people being very masculine and the type of character you would find in like a Fist of the North Star
oh yeah.
figure. is the type of thing that I'm into. But yeah, shoujo manga just seems a bit boring.
Gotcha.
So, has there ever been a title where you start getting into it, but the story just doesn't grab you?
Yeah, so I mean, there have been plenty of cases like that, and it's not really like the story didn't grab. Well, probably yeah, indirectly maybe the story didn't grab me. Like One Piece, I fell off huge. Like I'm way behind, but now people are saying it's pretty interesting now, so I'm gonna have to get back into that. That's one. Another one was Doctor Stone. I think I might have fallen off of the story because things really got in the way because I had other things going on in my life. But I was very engaged in the story, but then I kind of like fell off it a bit as well. Same thing with Bleach as well. So there've been times that I've fallen off because when I'm very engaged with the manga, I'm gonna keep following it. Like I'm gonna keep following, which is why I haven't fallen off of Promise Neverland. Haven't fallen off of Chainsaw Man. Never fell off of Naruto. Read it all the way to the end of its last chapter and everything like that. So I would say those titles have. Sometimes I go through a manga that the name looks pretty good, and I'll kind of peruse through it. And sometimes it'll be like, oh, the name was it was okay, but it wasn't like fully okay, so I'll just fall off of that title.
Um, One manga that I just cannot get into is Hunter x Hunter.
Ah, yeah, that's another one I haven't touched as well for some reason. And people really like it, but I've just like never really touched it. I was like, oh, okay.
It's made by the same creator of Yu Yu Hakusho, and I loved Yu Yu Hakusho. So I tried very hard to get into this, and I just can't. It doesn't grab me. I don't know what it is about it, but I am not a fan of Hunter x Hunter.
Gotcha.
And I wasn't a fan of Bleach at the end either, but by that point, I was just so invested in it that I just kept plugging away at it
Yeah,
because, yeah, Bleach definitely fell down in terms of quality as it got towards the end.
that's what I heard. Yeah.
So, what do you think about the price of manga? Because we talk about comic books all the time, like in our circle, where the price of a book be like $4, $5, or even buy one book, $8 for a 20-page comic. Whereas manga, for around the same price, you can get a what 150-page volume.
Oh yeah. So you know, sometimes and it really depends on like the writer. You know, me, I always throw down money for Red Hood and the Outlaws and the current Teen Titans book. Really dig that as well. There was a time that I was really throwing down for stuff like Nightwing and all that stuff, but because of different writers and everything like that, there was a time that Deathstroke I was really buying that. Not that Deathstroke got worse, I still keep up with it, but buying issues and all of that, is really different. Now, the trade paperbacks are like the equivalent of like the manga volumes that you find, which is what I think people really do like. Yeah, we'll wait for the trades, and even then the trades are like mad expensive sometimes, and compared to like the manga volumes. And I think it works for the manga volumes because people really like it. People really are engaged with the story. They're like, yeah, I'll do it, and I get like a couple chapters in a volume, and like I can like keep up with that as opposed to like, man, I gotta buy the issue. I gotta wait for the trade paperback. Like manga, they'll do stuff online. And people usually go to like the manga stream, what used to be, or Manga Fox, or Manga a lot, before it used to be one manga back in the day, and all that. And people go and read a chapter, but you see that's because like the people who come out with these, they don't they have people scan them, and they'll have people pay for that, so the artists are still making the money. But at the same time, like they don't sell like their chapters. They don't sell like a chapter, which is the approximately the size of a single issue comic, without any ads, basically. They don't sell those individually. They'll just go, well, not in the U.S. I think they might. It might be different in Japan, maybe, or China. but they don't sell them individually in the U.S. But people buy the volumes for it and be like, "Oh, yeah, that's
Um,
6 chapters." Yeah, so they'll
even
be
right
like,
now,
that,
an online service where you could pay for a subscription and you'll be able to read the individual chapters.
"Oh yeah," stuff like I think Crunchyroll and all that stuff like that. Maybe.
Yeah, manga tends to come out in anthology format where you buy one and you'll get a chapter of a bunch of different mangas.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I think that definitely be good for comic books because even if there was a story that you didn't like, chances are there's something that you did like in it, and therefore you would want to come back again.
Yeah, I got you. But I think the price thing is also a factor of the interest people have in comics. Like a long time ago, if I were to, let's say, like, people were like having a hard time saying, "Oh, I don't know if I can dole out a dollar 79 for an issue, maybe in the '90s," but they'd be like, "Oh man, in the '90s you had No Man's Land, and in the '90s, even though people didn't like it, you had the Clone Saga. In the '90s, you had a bunch of great stories, and people want to keep up with it, and everybody liked it, and the main titles were making you that money, and people really wanted to keep up with it. So it was like, yeah, I'll dole out a dollar 79 for this. I want to keep up with what's going on, and everything like that. I want to do this. I want to do that." But now you're in an era of comics where, like, you got some interesting titles like me, Red Hood, all the time, every day, whatnot. But you see, Red Hood is such a niche character. Like, you don't have people really doing that for Spider-Man anymore, even though apparently Nick Spencer is doing a good job on it, from what I've seen and what I've heard. I read his latest issue, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's pretty legit. That's pretty tight. You don't see that people doing that for Batman. People kind of cooled on Tom King now. Michael Bendis is not generating excitement for Superman. Wonder Woman by G. Willow Wilson. These are like your main titles, and people should be excited to want to keep up with the next issue of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. On the Marvel side, same thing. Iron Man is meh. Captain America, it's not good. All of the main titles that people you expected to keep up with. People don't want to keep up with it. And the Justice League, is doing pretty well, but right now people are like, well, if the main characters are not doing on their individual like books, I don't know if whether I could feel getting Justice League. Marvel's case with the Avengers, like, everybody's an Avenger now, and we don't know what they're doing, and we've made so many of our villains good guys, like, we don't know the challenge. And this is a Marvel's case, so people are not really, like, excited about going in and doling out money for something that they feel like they're not really going to vibe with it.
Well, if we're going to end it here for today, thank you, Master Shooty. You've been a wonderful guest.
It's been my pleasure. I thank you very much. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, it was great having you on, and I want to thank everybody out there watching. You've been a wonderful guest, and thank you for visiting the house, Mr. A. Have a good night.
Thank you.